The gala hall shimmered with chandeliers and murmurs of the elite. I walked in, aware of every gaze, my husband at the center, preparing to humiliate me as always. Months of hidden plans had led to this night. He thought mocking me publicly would crush my spirit, but every sneer only strengthened my resolve. As cameras flashed, capturing my supposed embarrassment, I held my head high. Unseen by him, I had already secured alliances with investors in the room. Tonight was not the end of me. It was the silent beginning of a calculated, crushing revenge he would never see coming. He raised his glass, voice dripping with mockery, highlighting my failures in front of everyone. Laughter echoed, eyes on me, but I smiled tightly, every second fueling my determination. While he celebrated temporary social power, I had been quietly building an empire, mastering strategy and influence. Every insult, every snide remark, had been logged and converted into actionable fuel for my rise. I had friends in corners he underestimated, mentors guiding every move. The humiliation he orchestrated would backfire spectacularly. This night, meant to shatter me, was instead the seed of my unstoppable ascent. Weeks later, I launched a venture no one expected from me, attracting attention from high-profile investors, the same elite who had witnessed my public disgrace. Media began covering my initiative, praising vision and brilliance. He tried to belittle it quietly, but every article, every discussion reflected my rising influence. The elite began whispering admiration for my intelligence and poise, unaware the very woman they laughed at had turned humiliation into unmatched strategy. I stayed silent, letting envy brew in his chest while my empire expanded quietly, proving that true power grows in shadows, far from the laughter of fools. My wealth grew rapidly. Investments, properties, and businesses far beyond his comprehension. Every triumph was a silent slap, every deal a nail in his pride. The gala mocking, once a mark of shame, became a legend of my rise. He watched from afar, clueless of the full extent of my power. The very networks he relied on for social status now pivoted towards me. Each step of my empire was carefully orchestrated to humiliate him silently yet permanently, demonstrating that mockery is temporary, but calculated revenge endures, leaving no room for redemption or excuse. I orchestrated an event where I publicly outshone him, not by anger, but brilliance. Investors, patrons, and elite guests whispered admiration while he sputtered with disbelief. The tables had turned completely. I controlled opportunities, influence, and narrative. The same people who laughed at me were now drawn to my aura of power. He attempted to intervene, but his words were powerless. Every movement of his arrogance now highlighted my dominance. The satisfaction was silent but complete. This wasn't just success, it was meticulously crafted revenge. He had underestimated me, and his regret was inevitable, deep, and unshakable. Months later, our paths crossed at another elite gala. He expected intimidation or fear from me, but instead found calm authority. Eyes of the crowd reflected recognition of my rise. He tried to charm, to assert dominance, but all attempts fell flat. The whispers and stares reminded him of the shift he failed to see. The humiliation he thought was mine had reversed. I smiled subtly, letting every glance of admiration and envy cement his failure. Power, wealth, and respect now followed me like a shadow he couldn't escape. This was the apex of silent vengeance, perfected over months of strategy. His attempts at damage control only backfired, highlighting my intellect and resilience. Every step he took to regain influence reflected desperation, while I expanded with precision. My empire grew beyond mere wealth. It became reputation, influence, and social mastery. The elite now sought my counsel, celebrated my ventures, and envied my position. Every whispered regret in his circles reached my ears, affirming my careful orchestration. I had transformed humiliation into unstoppable momentum. The woman he mocked was untouchable, a force built on betrayal and patience, leaving him impotent, envying the power he once believed he controlled. I continued acquiring assets and ventures strategically, ensuring no room for his comeback. The anniversary gala that symbolized my shame had become a blueprint for power, admired by the same society that once ridiculed me. His arrogance had blinded him to the methodical nature of revenge, patience, precision, and cunning. I leveraged every insult into opportunity, every sneer into strategy. My wealth and influence became a mirror of his failure. The woman he humiliated had grown into a legend of power and cunning, making him invisible in a society that once cheered his cruelty. Finally, I confronted him indirectly, allowing the elite to witness his helplessness. His arrogance now seemed trivial, his reputation crumbling. The power dynamic had reversed entirely. Laughter and envy replaced his mockery, confirming the poetic justice of his defeat. I had not only survived humiliation but had converted it into unmatched influence. Each glance he offered was now mixed with fear and regret. My empire, built quietly yet decisively, left no room for redemption for him. Every resource, ally, and venture demonstrated mastery born from betrayal, making my triumph absolute and his regret permanent. By the end, I had everything he never could: unstoppable wealth, authority, and respect. He was left with nothing but regret, whispers of envy, and the memory of his failed mockery. The anniversary gala of humiliation had transformed into a legend of strategic brilliance and revenge. I had turned betrayal into power, and the society that laughed at me now celebrated my dominance. The story of that night became an example of resilience, patience, and cunning, a testament to the woman who turned mockery into unimaginable success, leaving him powerless, envious, and forever regretting every second.